A Traitor's Hold was created by Cernus for the Golden Week of RM2K3 event on RPGmaker.net. An event that was kicked off in order to celebrate the release of an official English translation of RPG Maker 2003, an engine that is considered a classic by many and has been used to create a rather impressive list of classic RPG Maker games over the years. Albeit those games were created with an unofficial fan translation that has led to some rather heated discussions over the years, to say the least. Though I suppose this isn't the time and place to get into discussion about the pros and cons that the fan translation had going for and against it. As such, I suppose it's time to dig into the real topic of this video. Is A Traitor's Hold a good game, or simply a waste of everyone's time? On the story side of things, A Traitor's Hold is a mixed bag of good and bad ideas, in my opinion. On one hand, the game largely focuses on comedy, which means the plot can be rather hit or miss depending on your thoughts about dark comedy, and its application in a story that largely appears to be your typical RPG adventure about a ragtag group of heroes that need to save the world from your typical evil Dark Lord, after all. As such, it's really hard to rate the story on its merits, since its quality is going to be intrinsically tied to how much you enjoy the dark jokes thrown throughout the adventure. Of course, a few of the jokes also poke fun at typical RPG cliches, like being able to kill a lich by simply throwing a handful of feathers at it. Though to end on a more positive note, the game does end on a twist ending, which helps bring together the reason behind the game's name, as well as explain a bit more about what's actually going on. Though I won't get into any real details concerning the real ending, since I'd rather not ruin the experience for anyone interested in trying this game for themselves. On the combat side of things, the game is rather poorly balanced in my opinion. After all, the Summoner base becomes an unstoppable goddess of death and destruction for regular encounters after you acquire the power of Bahamut. And while a few of the bosses can act as a check for Henriette, they'll need to focus all of their efforts on constantly knocking her out, with consecutive punches in order to stop her assault. Otherwise, they'll simply fall victim to Bahamut's non-elemental damage after a handful of turns. And while I suppose a few would counter that constantly summoning Bahamut is balanced by the need to repeatedly use ethers to restore Henriette's magic points over the course of an extended battle or after a handful of regular encounters, I counter that the game provides a pretty easy method for overcoming this weakness, albeit that fix is likely a result of a glitch/inventing error than something the developer intended. Though I'll save discussing the glitch/inventing issues in question for a later section devoted to the topic. For now, I'd like to move on to discussing the graphics and sound. On the graphical and sound side of things, the game is rather average, shall we say, but that's to be expected. After all, part of the rules of the contest was that the various projects were only to make use of the graphics, music, and sounds found in the RTP. As such, the game was never going to stand out in this area, either in a positive or negative light for me, albeit that limitation may be more annoying for people that hate it when RPG Maker games rely solely on the RTP, and I've run into my fair share of those over the years. A Traitor's Hold contains at least two major glitches/eventing issues, albeit I don't have footage of one of them since I stumbled into it while doing a practice run in the final area before I had to head into work one morning, and I didn't feel the need to go back and repeat the experience since it's possible to get through the area in question without the glitch ever activating. As such, I really didn't feel the need to get footage of this particular issue, but if you finish a battle with one of the Guardians in the Dark Lord's Tower with one of your characters knocked out, they'll appear in the next battle with a single hit point while still being knocked out. As such, they can't act, but you can't revive them with a Phoenix down either. As such, you'll have to hope that the enemy obliges you by hitting the character in question and resetting their HP back down to 0 all over again so that you can finally revive them with a Phoenix down. On the plus side, the other glitch involves the first boss, or I should say it involves the eventing around the first boss. Apparently the developer forgot to set a switch to go off after the end of the boss battle that changes the flags concerning the headmaster of the local magic school. As such, you can reinitialize the quest to take on the Shade Lich as many times as you want. A glitchless eventing error that really works to the player's advantage since every time you defeat the Shade Lich, you gain a set of bone armor which can be sold for 600 gold pieces, as well as can steal a copy of the Shade Lich's wand, which can be sold for an additional 600 gold pieces. Plus, the fight with the Shade Lich is worth over 500 ability points, which means you can master any class in the game within 15 minutes or so. At the end of the day, A Traitor's Hold is a pretty solid contest game, and a rather fun experience overall if you're into the humor on display. But at the same time, this game is entirely dependent on its comedy to carry it. If the game's comedy doesn't appeal to you, then this game doesn't have anything else to fall back on. After all, the combat system is highly unbalanced, and the cast is comprised of caricatures that are entirely lacking in terms of depth. As such, this is a game I'd only advise you seek out if you're into dark comedies and enjoy watching people poke fun at old RPG cliches.